Welcome back to the podcast. This is Rule and Reign, on a mission to discover what it looks like to walk in governance, live in dominion, to rule and reign in every single area of our life. Let's talk porn. I bet you didn't think I'd say that today. For a lot of men or women who have this, I'll say, issue or challenge in their life, I said this week. For a lot of men, they suffer through this alone in life and without even realizing the power of vulnerability, community, and accountability. And today's guest, I have become particularly fond of in the last few months, getting to know him, what he is passionate about. I got to know his dad over the last little while and the impact they're doing all over the world. I'm super excited for this conversation. He is one whose mission to help men walk through and find healing from the area of porn and then regain dominion in this area. He leads an organization and community called Established Dominion, and I'm super excited to have him here on board. Fields, welcome, dude.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zeph. It's great to be on here. Great to get to know you the past few months. Awesome. Also, and just love what you're doing with Rule and Reign. And I just feel like we align so much of having dominion in different areas of life. So it's awesome.
Oh, dude, it's so cool to have you, man. I always ask our guests to please tell us a little bit about yourself. So I know you for the last few months now, but they don't. Tell us a little bit about Fields Cage and the thing that is really driving you in this season. What is the thing that you're really working towards in this season?
Yeah. So I'm Fields. I'm married to a wonderful wife, Joy, for 12 years now. We have an 11-year-old daughter and 7-year-old son. And I've just kind of for the past 2 years have just trying to give God my yes on everything that he tells me to do.
Wow.
And it's just like, all right, you want me to do that? Yes. And one of the biggest things in my life that I struggled with was pornography.
Um,
God's just been calling me, you need to go back into the fire with buckets of water. And I'm like a little resistant to it. And I'm like, okay, I got to give you my yes, God. So that's really what I've been pursuing and working on. In my life, I struggled with this for over 20 years and went through a lot of courses based on freedom and stuff like that and overcoming pornography. And they gave bits and pieces, but never really all the pieces of the puzzle until God revealed a few things to me. And so I'm like, okay, I need to teach this in a new way. And that's basically that we are spirit, soul, and body, and you have to really know how to win on all three fronts, in the physical realm, psychological realm, and the spiritual realm. And a lot of people kind of like go heavy emphasis on the spiritual realm or the psychological realm or something. So really trying to bring it in of let's win in all three of these, and just seeing great freedom with other guys in that teaching, all to the glory of God. And yeah, so just passionately pursuing that and a few other things that God's asked me to do that I'm saying yes to. So it's been a lot of fun.
so good, dude. I told you this off camera, but porn has been something that's been a huge part of my life. I've struggled with porn ever since I was 13, and I've lived with it my entire life. Even through ministry, as a youth pastor, leading small groups in church. It's all over the place, right? It's not something to keep under the covers. It is all over. It's gone viral. It's epidemic in the church still. And what I love about your mission is that not only is it about dominion, but literally helping others break free from this. And I went through your content, and the first thing that really blew my mind was when you drew out this diagram of how God has giving you full dominion. But in the corner of this diagram was a little circle where the enemy was just building blocks. Can you speak to that? Because obviously for me now, dominion, ruling and reigning, helping people really live in governance in every area of their life is something I'm very passionate about. But when I saw that diagram where the enemy was just gaining a foothold, a toehold, a block by block, you said something that really stuck with me. You said you have dominion over this entire area, but in that corner you don't, even though that's your area. And I actually got a little offended about that. Please speak to that, man.
Yeah. So if you think of kind of like a kingdom has walls, or even if you have a property and you have a fence on that property, right?
No.
It has a border, it has boundaries, right? And what the devil tries to do is he tries to come into kind of like the furthest unpresuming corner, the easiest corner that's farthest away from you, and tries to just set up like a little pop tent or whatever, and be like, "Hey, can I sit here and not be noticed? Like, will I get driven
Yeah,
out,
right.
or is it cool?" So you have a tent, and then he starts making like a little shelter, right? And then it kind of comes into like adding a bedroom onto it or whatever, and he starts building this kind of like dwelling place. And if you just let him kind of do his thing, if you don't take dominion, that
Mm,
actual corner of it is no longer yours. And the crazy thing about dominion is 100%. So if your kind of property is 99% yours, but there's this 1% that isn't yours, or that you haven't surrendered to God or something like that, you actually don't have dominion. And so what that will do is, unchecked, he will try to encroach more and more and more onto your property and enslave you whenever he can. And our job is to make sure we drive him out. That even if he puts a foot, if the Holy Spirit reveals to us of like, hey, you're not surrendering this to God, like you're having a foothold in this area, that we have to drive the devil out. And what he'll do is he'll try to possibly come into another corner, maybe another area of our life, right? And say, okay, am I cool here? And we have to, it's our job to keep driving him out and establish our dominion and say,
mm.
no, this is the territory that God has given me. You have no place here.
Wow. Establish our dominion. Um, eh, I think I asked you this, like, how bad is this across the board, man? Like, what are some stats do we have where pornography is like it's gone out viral, like an epidemic across the church, or even across just local communities? How damaging is this?
Yeah, so these are some stats from the Barna Group, who's a research and resource company focused on the intersection of faith and culture. And this is at least stats taken in America, and it's 3 out of 4 Americans report viewing pornography. And out of that group, 84% of them do not have somebody who's helping them avoid pornography in any way. So they're just running solo, and a lot of them, it's completely in the dark. No one knows about it, and this is especially shameful in the church. There's just this kind of like, we don't talk about that, or just stop doing it. And I think why is because the other statistic is 2/3 of pastors have a history in pornography, which is crazy.
Mm,
So it's like, if this is something that you have struggled with in the past, or that you are struggling with, you're not bold and going to promote the culture in the church to like, hey, let's talk about this, let's resolve this, because it's shameful in your own life too. And really what's crazy is, and we can dive deep into this if you want, but
yeah, please.
the results of pornography are you really, life starts getting dull, because what happens is, in your brain, pain and pleasure are actually processed in the same area of your brain. And so if like you think of like a seesaw, and if you push down manually on pleasure, what happens is your brain's like, no, we need this balance, and it puts a lot over here on the pain side actually, and it overcompensates. So that's where you have like depression and things like that. But also, even the little things in life, you start to realize that there isn't the joy for them, or you can't be happy on the little things. And so that's it's so much more than just a sexual issue. It really encompasses all of your life, and sucking out the good,
Mm.
because your brain's actually overcompensating on kind of like the negative feelings there. And it's wild, the psychology of it.
Does this
So
explain why men who have an issue with porn, or guys who have an issue with porn, who are married, they can't seem to see their wives with the same amount of like um, pleasure that they're experiencing from pornography? Pornography really sucks the life out of your marriage, and really sucks the life out of you just being a husband. Like, does this explain why, like as you've just described, when you put negative pleasure on one side, does this affect the way you see your wife on the other?
yeah, I think that's slightly different. Whereas what you're doing is you're building desire for a certain style of woman, for
Mm,
certain attributes, and you're kind of like changing your palette, your taste palette or whatever.
yeah.
And so what it does is, and there's certain like kind of like emotions and energy and wanting to do these kind of things and being more
Mm.
open to it. And you're really imprinting on yourself like a desire, or growing in yourself a desire for those things. And so when your wife doesn't quite meet that desire, there's a kind of like a gap there
Yeah.
that you're wanting her to fill, and it's not filling. And so I actually stumbled upon this on accident on our last vacation. Of course, we're at the beach, and I'm like, I want to just make sure that I'm just all out for my wife and not eyeing any other girl, right? And
Mm.
I took the most attractive picture of my wife and put it on my phone. And every time I looked at my phone on my lock screen, I was just like, man, she's so beautiful. And what I did this, or the accidental result from this, is I grew my desire for my wife. And I didn't realize that was doing it. But it's like, okay, how many images have you looked at another woman and been like, oh my
Yeah, right.
goodness? And then how many images have you looked at your wife and been like, oh my goodness? Well, you're probably 10xing over here other women. You're not like really building desire for your wife. So there's your gap. So if you start starving the desire for these certain body types or whatever, or activities, and you start feeding yourself the, man, I love my wife, like I'm
Mhm.
building this desire for my wife, the scales are really going to tip there, and you're going to start enjoying your wife, like even outside of sexual activities, just being like, oh my goodness, this woman
Yeah.
is amazing. And that is how you flip the desire. You make sure you're very aware of what you're feeding yourself, and you grow the desire that you want. Because desire is actually good. What the devil
Mm.
has done is he's corrupted or twisted desire. And we have
Mm.
to make sure that we have the right desire in the pure form that God intended it for.
Let's talk about that. So you say desire. I know growing up in church, we desire can often be demonized for, and we do this a lot. We demonize things we have no understanding of. And what you just said right there, desire is actually really good. I've found desire as a real powerful driving force. And in the beginning of your videos, content videos, you explain how you encourage guys to really hone in on that desire to actually redefine their why of breaking free from porn, and also the desire to actually just reign in their marriage, in purity. Talk a little bit about that, like reframe desire for us all.
Okay, reframing desire. Okay. So desire is actually what propels you. And what the devil wants is, the devil wants you basically stuck in the mud. So if he can limit your desire or pervert your desire, he's won. But if we are able to say, no, this is the desire that God has put in my heart, and this is what I'm supposed to do, then we are full steam ahead and reign in abundant life. So that is something that we really have to manage, which is very interesting, because in the realm of kind of like a sexual addiction, right? It's
Mm.
different than like addiction to drugs. Because a lot of people say you have to come at this thing and kill it at the root, right? Well, in drugs, and this is just a black or white example, right? In drugs, it's like, okay, we can kill it at the root and remove the tree, and we're fine. It can be completely out of our life. But with sex and arousal and things like that, we actually don't want to remove the tree. Like, we want to have a healthy relationship in that arena, especially if you're married, right? So it's not, you have to go something different than just coming at it at a root issue. Like, maybe you have a lemon tree, right? Lemons are your fruit. Well, we want apples to be our fruit. And
Mm.
what would that take is that would take a complete DNA change. And so in this process, you have to completely become a different person. You have to become you 2.0 if you want different fruit in your life. So that is, and changing of that desire is one of the steps that it takes to become you 2.0 and to have different fruit, because your bad desires, your old desires, is going to produce lemon fruit basically for you. But if you're able to really grasp a hold of your desire, align it with God's desires, and align it
Mm.
what's healthy for your life, then you will have good fruit that's sweet, that's wonderful, and actually benefits your life and benefits the lives of people around you.
Yeah, wow. Desire is God's desire, but actually been perverted. because that's exactly what pornography is actually doing, and it's what it did. Let's backtrack a little bit. In the beginning, you spoke about identity and shame and where pornography will come through. Let's speak to the person right now who's actually has been living this for a long time, didn't know where it came from. Tell us, like, how does this even creep through? How does a person even become exposed to this? And speak to the shame. How can we dismantle this whole oppression of shame? It is a real thing, but how can we help someone like walk through this whole dilemma of actually living with shame because of it?
Yeah. So with it starting in a person's lives, normally it's innocent or accidental. It's not like this, I'm gonna go look at some naked women. It never starts like that. It always starts at little and little and little. And it's the devil saying, hey, it's okay. Or hey, you can go a little bit more. Or let's look at this and entertain this curiosity, right? And then once he gets you kind of like past a certain line, he goes on the opposite side and then starts shaming you and just really
Mm,
degrading you and putting you down. Now, there's a distinct difference between guilt and shame that we have to understand. Guilt is I did something wrong. It is natural to feel guilty. But the thing is, shame says I am wrong. It's an identity issue.
wow. Yeah,
And
yeah.
when you see that I am wrong and you take on that identity, well, what fruit are you going to produce? More fruit of
Mm,
that. You're
yeah.
going to keep getting the same results. So it's actually digging yourself further and further down the hole if you accept that identity. So the biggest thing is to realize with shame that that is not your identity. I do not identify with that anymore. Romans 8:1, especially in the Passion Translation, says, now the case is closed and there is no longer any accusing voice against you. Basically, if we have a court case, the gavel has come down and you have been deemed innocent. Like Jesus Christ has washed away all your sin. And if you really dive into the Greek word there, the best English kind of translation is like the court file is expunged. So even if
Wow.
you come back a month later and say, hey, can you give me the files on that court case? They're like, wait, that court case isn't even in our system. Like it's
Mm.
not just that you are proving innocent, it's that it's completely eradicated from the system. And that's how God sees you. And you have to see yourself that way and align with God's identity of you, not the identity of shame that the devil is trying to handcuff you in.
Whew. Well, a good friend of ours, Benji, says that humility is actually you agreeing with the way God sees you. And that's a
Yes.
starting point, right? That's a starting point. What
Yes.
you're saying is that until you see yourself the way God sees you, you'll never go through the process of even dealing with some of this stuff, closing some open doors, even like confronting some stuff that in our lives. And so, I love what you said about shame. That like, how guilt is something that like I did something, but shame is something that I am wrong. Um, so in order for someone to actually go through the process of even confronting this I'll say issue for lack of a better term, what's the starting point for them? For
Yeah.
someone like me, okay, if I was struggling with it again, what's the starting point for someone like me?
Yeah. I think the first thing is you have to commit to saying, you know what? I am going to be a man of purity. Whatever it takes, whatever I have to go through, I'm going to do what it takes to figure this out. And really that's the starting point because it doesn't matter what path you go down or whatever. It's saying I'm going to be the person that crosses the finish line of purity. I'm going to be the person that this is no longer going to enslave my life. I'm going to have dominion. So that's number one. You have to have that mindset of, you know what? I may fall 7 times, but it says in the Bible, the righteous man gets back up. That you are like, no
Mm,
matter what, I'm going to keep getting back up and I'm going to pursue this. The second huge thing is we have to come into a greater awareness of
mm,
what actually leads up to the issue. See, with when we relapse or look at pornography or do something that we didn't want to do, the devil comes and tries to whop on that shame. And what
mm,
we want to do is pull away from the situation as much as possible because we're like, oh, this shame feels horrible. But actually, if you can stop and be like, okay, I ask God for forgiveness. I'm doing my best to stay pure. Now let's look. And you have to kind of do this within 6 hours of look, okay, what happened before I looked at pornography? Okay, what happened
Mm,
before that? Okay, what happened before that? I was stressed. And then I
mm,
just was doom scrolling Instagram. And then I went to this picture, and then I went to a website, and then I relapse. And what you'll start to see is like, okay, what I actually need to do instead of just trying harder not to look at pornography, I need to work on a little bit managing my stress so that when I have stress, and this is just one example, there could be many other kind of things, but start dealing with it there. And
mm.
what I kind of equate it to is like a line of dominoes, right? If you hit one domino, they're all gonna fall. And say domino 10 is relapse, but domino 1 is you kind of stressed out or a crazy situation at work or something like that. Well, if you see domino 1 start to fall and you take out dominoes 2, 3 and 4, well, they're not, the rest aren't going to fall. So when you start coming into a greater level of awareness in your own life of what is the sequence of events, you're able to catch that. And you know what's crazy is the devil knows the sequence of events better than we do. And all he has to do is
Wow.
tap the first domino and he's like, I got him. Like he doesn't have to work hard at all. But the thing is, as men, we aren't that aware of our emotions in life. We're kind of just like head
Yeah.
down, looking forward and stuff. So if we're able to build this in our life, it's really, really powerful.
But it's one thing to be aware of your vulnerability and the cracks in your armor, but like, how is a man who does like you said, isn't even emotionally aware or like or even self-aware of their own weaknesses, the cracks in the armor, the vulnerabilities on the wall? How is a man meant to even do that, right? So before I even go, like, I'll explain. Like, I'll talk a little bit about my own journey. Is that when I finally broke free from porn, the first thing I did was that I opened up to my pastor, and he was my friend at the time, and I lived with him at the bottom of his house at a studio down below where I was flatting, and I was the youth pastor back then as well. So I just like, hey man, I know I'm the youth pastor. I'm actually struggling with this. Talk through the whole thing. Um, he asked me some questions. Like, what do you have access to? For me at the time was obviously my phone and my laptop, and so that was the crack in my wall of the vulnerability in my life was that I had too much access to my phone and my laptop. And so at night, one of the practical things I did was that I would climb the stairs and leave my phone and my laptop on this kitchen floor, and I'll go back downstairs to my bedroom and go to bed. And then one time, his wife started asking, "Why does he keep leaving his stuff up here in our house? He's got a house down below." And not knowing that um, that was my what we call that was my practical way to actually really block this and let go of this. And then I ended up having to let go of my phone and go back to those button phones. Remember the little flip flop with the little buttons? Oh, that was it's so cringe, man. But that was what I used to do, um, and then allow brothers to actually stand in the gaps of my own vulnerability. And I ask this because, like, how is a man meant to even be aware of their own cracks in the wall? Like, what's it gonna take? Is it gonna take, something like I did? Like, I'm having people stand in the gaps, having people hold you accountable before they even get, or even someone like yourself, going through the program.
Yeah, absolutely. Accountability is huge because you know that, okay, I'm going to have to talk about this. I'm going to have to really dive into this if I move forward. The biggest thing is it kind of goes back to the self-reflection. For you, you realized, okay, the pattern here was my phone and my laptop, right? At
Mhm.
nights. And so you did what it took to put it up, right? And then you kind of went a step further of like, okay, then during the day times, it is my phone in general. I have to go to a button phone. And some guys listening to this might be like, is that what it's going to have to take? Yeah, again, it comes back to, are you willing to do
Mhm.
whatever it takes? Maybe you don't
Mhm.
have to do that for your whole life, but until you really gain some good footing of purity and some good, like, hey, I've been pure for six months or something like that. Are you willing to do what it takes, and are you willing to do the hard things? But yeah, the biggest thing, and I go through this a little bit in our course, but when you're able to, after like a relapse or two or three, you're able to cross analyze and say, okay, what's the
Mm,
pattern here? And again, it's painful to sit in this and to actually kind of dwell on the steps that you're taking. And the biggest thing that you're going to have to learn in this is that you can sit in pain and you don't have to run away from it, because the biggest thing is the majority of guys use pornography whether they know it or not because there's some sort of emotional pain and they're
mm,
numbing out. So what's going to happen is when you remove pornography, which is your painkiller, when you remove your painkiller, the pain's actually going to increase. So, and you have to be okay with it. You have to sit in that pain. So when you're looking back and kind of cross-referencing what's happened between relapse number 1, 2, and 3, it's going to be very hard or very painful. But if you're able to sit in that pain and kind of make the correlations of like, okay, this is what's happening and how do I change that, then they'll see really good the cracks in their walls and the cracks in their armors and how to fill in those cracks and what to do next time when this situation happens.
For someone who's watching this and then, like, has got no clue what their pain is, can you give us some example? Like, what are some of the pains that can bring this up?
Yeah. So, like I said earlier, stress is one of them. Anger's another one of them. It could even be
Mm,
something as simple as finances.
yeah,
It can
wow.
even be like responsibilities at work.
Mm,
There's other things when you get like too many responsibilities on your plate or you have a deadline or something and that's just inside you're like, oh my goodness, like it just feels like the weight of the world's on your shoulders, right? You just need to break away and escape for a minute. Want to not feel that for a second. There's a lot of different possibilities. One is the faster scale, and there's this guy who actually helped people who were overcoming alcohol addiction. And what he found was it's an acronym for FASTER, meaning forgetting your priorities. A was getting anxious. S was life is speeding up because you forgot your priorities. Now you're trying to like catch up on yourself. T is then you get ticked off, and then
mm,
E is when you have, what is it? Oh, exhaustion. And if you ever get to exhaustion, you're gonna relapse. Like
relapse.
it's inevitable,
Yeah.
unless you're like tie your hands behind your back or like put your phone in a lockbox or something like that. If you
Right.
hit E, that is the biggest pain. Exhaustion is the biggest pain. But all of those kind of along the lines, those were the dominoes that he recognized in a lot of people's lives. But any one of those along the lines can cause you to really want to numb out.
Wow. Um, what's at stake here?
Yeah.
What's really at stake here for someone who's, well, let's say someone who's like, for someone who's married, what? An unmarried guy will say, "Oh, dude, you're having all the sex in the world," and like they're two different things. So what's really at stake for someone who's actually married and has a marriage and a family, and someone who's actually single and not married yet and is getting ready to be married? What's actually at stake here, man?
Yeah. So I mean the very base level things is you say, okay, pornography is innocent. I'm not hurting anyone, right? But it
Mm.
always grows. You're never satisfied, and you want more. So as a married man, you're going to want more than what your wife can give you because you're feeding
Yeah,
the
wow.
desire of these things, right? So it's good luck trying to anyways, trying to keep it at just images. You're going to want something more. It's going to be the perfect moment where a person compliments you or whatever, and an affair is an open door, which is a possibility. For non-married men, let me just tell you that you think that I have this addiction now, or I have this bad behavior now. When I get married, it'll be fine because I
Mm.
have a healthy way to release, right? Okay, well, let me ask you this. When you see your wife come out of the shower and you're turned on, but she has a headache, what are you going to do? You are going to run to pornography. Like you're not going to be able to be aroused and say no to it. Like you are going to fall. So that's surface level. But here is really what the devil's after is Hebrews 12:1 talks about like, let us cast off every weight so that we can run the race God has for us. And the devil's goal is to put as many weights on us as possible so that we cannot fully live out the purpose that God has for us. And maybe you can, but you're going really slow. Like think for instance, if you are carrying 100-pound like weighted vest on you, you're not going to be running. You're not going to be sprinting. And the more that we can strip off these things that the devil is trying to hold us down, the faster we can run and the faster we can say yes to the things that God has for you and live a fulfilled life of pure joy just for the kingdom of God. That is the ultimate thing that you're
Wow.
sacrificing when you're allowing yourself to stay under the shackles of pornography.
Come on, dude. So what I love about your community and the content you created is basically you created a fusion of both the spiritual aspect, the physical aspect, and the neurological aspect. So this is stuff that I did not know at the very beginning of my journey, right? I wish someone told me because I was also just prayer, ask God for forgiveness, and then read your Bible every day, and that was my journey. Speak to this because like one of the things I learned in the community was these neurological highways, these pathways, or these ruts. um, First, you speak to like the neurological rut that pornography is actually creating in the brain of men, and then the highways that we needed that you teach us to create from then on.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Because it's not just a I do my spiritual thing, God, please forgive me, and then help me get stronger about this. But there's obviously the spiritual aspect and then the physical act that we need to do to keep ourselves safe, right? So what does it look like?
yeah. So on the neural pathways, there's a phrase that neurons that fire together wire together. So that means when I do this, when I do that, when I do that, like it's the domino effect. Basically, it's a highway or it's ruts, if you will, of when you get started down a certain path of ruts. Like you're not going to get out of your car, or your car isn't going to get out of those ruts until you just ride it all the way to the end. And so what we now that we've kind of like identified and have greater awareness of, all right, this is kind of my old ruts that I go down. When I do this, I'm eventually going to end up looking at pornography. What we do is we start to create new ruts. It's like, okay, when I'm stressed or when I'm mad or when the weight of the world feels like I'm on my shoulders, I'm going to do steps 1, 2, and 3, and that's actually going to pull me closer to God. So this is a new neural pathway that you're building, but in easier terms, it's you're building new ruts to go down to make sure you don't go down old ruts. And what I've done is let me preference this even before when you're turned on, your brain isn't actually working all the way. Your logic, prefrontal cortex is shut off, and your basically fight or flight mode is turned on. That's your
Wow.
limbic system. And you have to turn that limbic system, the fight or flight, off, and you have to turn your logic back on. So that's the physical thing that you have to do, because like you can be reading your Bible all you want. Like I've had times where I'm turned on reading my Bible and crying because I'm like, God, I'm just looking at letters on a page. Like I can't even like barely, I'm reading your word, but it's doing nothing for me. Why? It's because you have to take care of the physical aspect first, then take care of the neurological aspect, and then you can come at it from a spiritual level. And I've created a resource just for the Rule
Yeah.
and Reign community and all the listeners here on this podcast of a 3-step guide to preventing unwanted sexual behaviors. Basically, when you're turned on, what to do to kind of go from turned on to turned off in about 30 seconds to a minute, how to
Right.
really apply the new neural pathways or create new ruts, and then also what to do at the spiritual end of it to make the devil regret that he even messed with you. And this resource is wonderful because it quickly kills the fear that you'll crumble under the weight of temptation, relapse, and get caught. And you can go to that by going to gift.establishdominion.com/rule
Awesome.
and get that free resource for anyone who's listening. And it's just really powerful to stop temptation in its tracks and flip it on the devil, where it's like, no, I'm in dominion here. Temptation, I'm not succumbing to what you want me to do.
Yeah, awesome, dude. I'll attach that link at the bottom of this episode as well and get it out there. Um, Now let's get a little bit personal. So you heard a little bit about my story, but people are like watching this and like, wow, this guy's got all the tools. But like, what's his story? So what's your story with pornography and how you've come through the whole journey? Allow us to connect with you because obviously, I heard it said before that people are inspired by your strengths, but they connect with your flaws. And so tell us a little bit about Fields and his journey with coming out of porn and then finally putting his flag down. I have dominion on this.
Yeah. So it started when I was 12. I accidentally figured out what my body could do. I accidentally figured out how to masturbate and just was super curious. But I just knew this topic was shameful,
Mm,
just coming from my parents. So I didn't really want to ask them about that. And I just started being curious. And as a young boy, really relating, oh, okay, when I see pretty women, I'm turned on, I can do this. And then it progressed more and more and more. And like I said before, I thought marriage would solve it, and it didn't. We were pregnant with our first child, and I went on a business trip, and it was normally my wife comes on the business trip with me, but she was pregnant, so she couldn't. So another woman came and was kind of like my assistant, and we were sleeping in different hotel rooms, but we were having dinners for the 3 days, and this emotional affair developed.
right.
Thankfully, the best thing that could have happened to me is that I got caught, and that prevented anything physical happen and it going further, because it was definitely heading that way. That's the moment I was just praying to God, and I'm like, God, this is rock bottom for me. And I heard God chuckle, and he was like, no, if you continue down this path, I'll show you rock bottom. And that
Wow.
just scared me. Like, I'm like, oh, you're right. I could lose my family. I could lose my kids. Like, there's so much, so much pain that could come from this. And that's when I started really showing up to groups and getting accountable. And like I said, there was things that they taught me, which was good. There was one kind of course and group that really hit on the physical side, and then there was one course and group that really hit on the psychological side, and then another minister that really helped me understand my authority and how basically you make the devil regret messing with you if he ever messes with you. And I'm like, whoa. And God was starting to show me all these pieces come together. And I think one of the other things that really helped me solidify it is knowing, okay, I can sit in this pain and I don't have to reach for a painkiller. I can sit in
Mm,
this pain. I can reset my body and do these things, but I am going to ask God to help me through this pain and not get myself out of this pain by looking at pornography.
mm.
And along that process, that was me cold plunging and stuff, learning that lesson through cold plunging. Of you sit in the cold plunge and your body freaks out and wants to get out, and you're like, no, in pain I choose my response, I do not react. And so that really translated into emotional pain. Of in emotional pain, I do not react and just go to pornography, I choose my response. And it was just a wonderful journey of now being free. It's like my wife can grab my phone, and it's
Yeah,
like
come
there's no
on.
like jerk or like, oh, am I hiding stuff? And like knowing finally that like I can look at my son and be like, okay, you can follow in my footsteps now, because like
Mm,
for 5 years he couldn't follow in my footsteps, or I didn't want him to follow in my
yeah.
footsteps. And just that feeling now of like, man, okay, I have dominion over this.
Mm.
It is my say of what I choose to do with my sexuality. There's no other pull that can say, hey, you do this and I have to submit to it. It's like, no, I have established dominion.
Oh, dude, you said so many things there that I've got so many questions for, but we're really running out of time, and I wanna honor your time. But 2 questions. You said your son and your parents, okay? So number 1, what is a parent meant to do, right? How does a parent become part of the, I guess, the initial conversation with their son, or just creating safe environment around so that the son can actually come forward and have these conversations. Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned that like part of this thing for you was your parents trigger the shame. I'm not sure what that was, but how does a dad create an environment of safety where my son can come talk to me, well, I can have these open conversations with him.
Yeah. So there is a book that's literally called How to Talk to Your Kids About Sex. In that book, they say do not have one 60-minute conversation, have 61-minute conversations. And that's the key, where we have multiple short little conversations of like, hey, what's this or what's that? Oh, it's this, and da 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 da, and then you're done, right? And so it's this casual talk instead of what a lot of dads and parents do is they don't talk about anything until 13, and they lay it all out and say, all right, you're good, and we're not talking about this again. They don't say we're not talking about this again, but it's kind of implied, and that creates shame. If you
Mm,
talk about it as like, this is for my 7-year-old son, I say, hey, we're walking into the store and they have a big swimsuit ladies laying on her side, hanging out,
yeah, man.
like completely hanging out. I basically say, hey, there's an inappropriate picture. For us as men, we are not going to look at those inappropriate pictures. We're going to look over here instead, right? Quick 30-second conversation, right? So it's just these making it casual and just informational. When you go into deeper things, it's like, hey, this is just biology. This is what God designed us to do. And as they get older, you have a more appropriate conversation, age appropriate conversations. But if you're able to trickle in the conversations, then they will feel comfortable bringing something up. Hey, this guy said this at school. Like, what's that mean? You're like, all right, here we're going to talk about it. So if you're comfortable with it, they'll be comfortable with it.
Last question before going to more of established dominion. You said something before about choice. At the beginning of my journey of healing through pornography, God spoke to me from Deuteronomy, I think it's 33:3, where it says, "I've given you the choice between life and death, or that you would choose life." And every time I come to a point of being vulnerable, I'm reminded of that question, that scripture. God said, "Son, you get to choose. You get to choose life," and He said, "Oh, that you choose life so that your family might live." Right? I heard someone say that what you don't deal with today, you leave for your son to deal with, or to fight through tomorrow. That for me is a cost I don't want to I don't want to pay, you know. And so, would you speak to that for men right now who's like, I need to actually face this because I've got kids.
Yeah. I mean, we can even see it in the Bible where David struggled with this, Solomon struggled with this. So what it happens is normally if you're struggling with this, your dad struggled with this too.
Yeah,
And it's just going to keep going from generation to generation until somebody breaks it. And you are the
wow,
chain breaker. Like you are the one to break the chains and say what I had to struggle with, my child is not going to struggle with. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that I break this in my life so that that I am able to walk with him and he doesn't have to struggle with this in his life. Because if you're not able to break it in your life, it's like almost inevitable that he's going to struggle with it. And that's where we have to, as leaders, be the man that God has called us to be. Lead
yeah,
your son, get everything right with you, and you'll be able to help him on the way. Now, I understand that men are on a journey and they might not be there yet.
yeah,
Don't say, well, I'll talk to my son when I get all cleaned up, right? Because like we don't leave it to that. But what I'm saying is you pursue purity while helping your son in any talking about this to your son in any way and encouraging him in every way. And like I haven't had this talk yet because we're talking about bad images with my son. We haven't quite gone into like nudity and naked images and stuff like that, but there will be a time where I tell my son, I struggled with this and it
mm,
was horrible. I had no control over it,
mm,
but God brought me free. But even if you say I'm struggling with this now, and don't let it get to you, like being vulnerable, that is huge. Whether you're struggling or if you have come out of it, and it's really up to us to lead the way. Even if you're going through it, leading, I am pursuing purity. This is what I'm going for, and just having the confidence of the end result that I'm going to do whatever it takes to live pure.
so good, dude. Um, Dude, tell us a bit more about established dominion, the community you're building, what you've built here for men to actually go through the process and find healing and walk in purity in this area.
Yeah, so it is a course in community. The course has 3 modules where we basically go into deeper and deeper levels of the physical aspect, the psychological aspect, and the spiritual aspect of this. And that is 37 videos. It's set up where you can watch like 1 video a day for about 6 weeks. And then alongside of that, you have access to me, and we're in a community where we can have weekly accountability and really help each other through this. And also, if you have like questions, all right, well, you said this, but it's not working for me. And let's really analyze that. And the other thing that's huge is I ask guys, okay, well, do you know kind of like what triggers this? What are your dominoes per se? And they're like, I don't know. And we're really able to work through that together, and having someone else kind of helps you see some of your blind spots and
Yeah, wow.
really identifies this, that we can help speed up the process at a faster rate than if it was just going through a course by yourself or whatever. So that
Yeah,
community
100%.
is huge there. And if you're interested, go to establishdominion.com/join and watch the video, look at a few things we have there, and see if it's right for you. I'd love to help you on your path to purity.
100%, man. I'll drop that link into the course, into the show notes as well. Is there any is there a prerequisite for men to be part of the course?
You have to be a man. That's the only prerequisite. We're not accepting any women, but if you're a man, you're accepted. So yeah.
Dude, thanks so much for your time, man. I really, really appreciate the work you're doing, the impact you're going for. This really lights me up, especially when it comes to Dominion. And dude, I'm just so grateful for all that you're doing, and for you to having gone through that healing and helping other men walk through it as well. Just phenomenal. And from us to you, establish Dominion. We love you, dude, and I keep going and championing you along the way. Uh, um, that is us for today, folks. This is Rule and Reign. We are on a mission to discover what it looks like to walk in governance, live in dominion, to rule and reign in every single area of our life. I encourage you, please check out Established Dominion. I'll drop those links into the show notes below. Let you guys see you next time.
Thanks, Steph. See you guys.